My New Zealand music research project is focused on Dave Dobbyn, and my two research questions are: how did Dave Dobbyn's musical influences inform his music, and what is the meaning of his song Wailing, and how does it relate to his circumstances at the time of writing it? Dave Dobbyn was born in 1957 in East Auckland, New Zealand. He was the third of 5 children, and he became fascinated with music at the age of 10, calling the Beatles' album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, as the music of his dreams. He learned to play the piano and guitar at age 15, and he founded a band that played at local hospitals and colleges. By age 16, he discovered his true aspirations, which was to play guitar on stage with a band. His school, a Catholic college, encouraged music and even held music competitions, but he was too timid and he lacked the courage to enter. After he left high school, Dave Dobbyn worked as a bank teller at BNZ for 9 months, and he described this as miserable. He applied to Teachers College twice and was accepted on his second application. However, almost immediately he was approached by 2 former friends from his college, and they persuaded him successfully to join their band that would later become known as The Dudes. Throughout 1975, The Dudes would perform from pub to pub, and upon a successful nightclub performance, they would make their way to the Windsor Castle Hotel in Parnell, Auckland. This was a more respectable venue, and shortly afterwards they won the Battle of the Bands competition in 1976. Dobbyn's persistent activity in the band made it difficult for him to attend Teachers College. A band that was formed just for the fun of it made Dobbyn realise his true aspirations once again, and he quit Teachers College shortly before completing his first year. The band turned professional and he began to focus on it full time. The Dudes would perform from pub to pub throughout New Zealand, and in their 5 years together they would record 2 studio albums. While Peter Ehrlich was the frontman of the band, Dave Dobbyn would assume the role for their biggest hit, which would be Be Mine Tonight. The song won Single of the Year in the 1979 Aotearoa Music Awards, and it showcased Dobbyn's talent front and centre. The Dudes already had the perfect frontman in Peter Ehrlich, but when Dobbyn stepped before the microphone, he threw his heart and soul into it.
Asian cigarettes, a long talk, a few cans if you can.
Be Mine Tonight and Bliss, another one of the band's successful singles, would become pub rock anthems throughout New Zealand. In 1979 they toured with British rock band The Members, and Dobbyn got his taste for international potential. The Dudes would come to an end in 1980, and Dobbyn described the folding of the band as months of despair that consumed him at the age of 22. He had spent the last 3 years on the road with the band, and now without the support structure, he was lost. He moved into a room in a small house, and began to work away on some songs while struggling with an addiction. Not wasting too much time though, Dobbyn had written new songs and formed a band during 1980. The band was called Dee Dee Smash. And while Ian Morris was the breaker-upper of The Dudes, he would actually produce Dee Dee Smash's debut album, Cool Bananas, which was released in early 1982. It sold exceptionally well, and it was the first New Zealand album to enter the charts at number 1. The band moved to Australia within a year of their successful album, as many New Zealand musical acts often do, trying to break into the international market. He married his wife Annalisa in 1983, but he would face financial problems and problems with his record companies. However, New Zealand continued to prove to be a successful touring environment. The band would come back a few times a year, perform to packed venues, and they would make enough money to subsidise life in Australia. Dobbyn would be charged with inciting a riot after police interrupted Dee Dee Smash's performance in Aotearoa Square in 1984. The audience turned into a riot and they caused a damage of over $1 million. He was later cleared of all charges, but the entire incident made him feel like he never wanted to return to Auckland. He felt lonely, and shortly after the band broke up. The details of the band's breakup are vague, but they disbanded in 1986 after Dave Dobbyn started to record on his own. The band's downfall had been in motion for a couple of years, with Dave Dobbyn and Peter Warren, the drummer, becoming the only 2 permanent members. Dobbyn was chosen to write the soundtrack for the animated film Foot Flats in 1986, and this gave him good pay, and he wrote 2 hit singles, those being You Oughta Be in Love and his arguably most famous song, Slice of Heaven.
Hey, I got a lot of faith in you. I'll stick with you, kid, that's the bottom line.
Slice of Heaven sat at number 1 for 2 months in Australia and 4 months in New Zealand. Despite this initial success, he could not break into the Australian market, with record labels demanding Slice of Heaven clones, while Dave Dobbyn saw himself going in a different direction, and he moved back to New Zealand. In 1988, he released his debut solo album, Loyal, which featured songs like Love You Like I Should and Loyal. His next album, Lament for the Numb, featured songs such as Belle of the Bull. The 1994 album Twist was produced by Neil Finn of bands Split Enz and Crowded House, and it contains some of my favourite Dave Dobbyn songs, such as Naked Flame, It Dawned on Me, and Language. After Twist, he self-produced his next album, The Islander, which received widespread acclaim and reached number 1 on the New Zealand album charts. He would go on to record more albums over the years, with a notable song being Welcome Home, which was also once again produced by Neil Finn. Dave Dobbyn has been hugely influential in the New Zealand music scene ever since the late 70s, and because of this he was knighted in 2021. Wailing is off Dee Dee Smash's second and final studio album effort, titled The Optimist. It was released in 1984 and it was written by Dave Dobbyn. I'm going to be discussing the musical elements used, playing along with some instruments, and providing an analysis of the song. So let's have a listen. The song starts out with a single electric guitar riff. This means the texture is monophonic, but it becomes polyphonic when the second melody, played on a violin, is heard. So let's talk about both of these melodies separately before looking at how they work together. This riff is playing through most of the notes in the C major scale, C, G, D, E, A, and B. The riff is played twice before the song introduces the second melodic passage. So let's listen to that now. So that's actually played on a real violin, but I'm going to play it on the keyboard, so this is how it goes. Now, just like the guitar riff, that's using most of the notes from the C major scale, in fact every note except for F. And so it's actually using the exact same notes as the guitar riff, but in a different melody, so it's playing as a counter melody to the guitar riff. The violin, in regards to the nature of the song, evokes a sense of solitude, because the violin is often played with accompaniment, but here it is played solo. The song is about missing loved ones, the analogy being drawn to a desperate sailor caught at sea, so already we can see the feelings that the song is trying to evoke from us, just in the first 8 bars of the song. That was a very brief explanation about what the song is about, but I'll talk more about that later when I've finished my analysis. Alright, so now let's listen to the first verse where the vocals enter.
Sing bravo, bravo. You're a brave, brave man. I know.
Alright, so when the vocals enter, the first 2 melodies stop, and we hear these staccato guitar strums playing C, G, and F. This makes the song have a homophonic texture, with one melody, which is the vocals, dominating the mix, while still having the guitar lower in the mix. What I mean by staccato guitar strums, I'm going to demonstrate here.
Sing bravo, bravo. You're a brave, brave man. I know.
So the violin comes back in during the verse, just playing singular notes, again of the C major scale, so let's have a little play along with that.
And when your ship can't handle the heaviest seas, your spirits will get you through. No down on bended knees.
So this passage plays G, F, E, D, C, F, E, G. And as you can see here, this arrangement of the C major scale is using an F now and not using an A or a B like the guitar riff and the first violin melody. So this cycle of notes starts with G, F, E, D, and on the second run through it goes to the root on C and it ends on the fifth, which is G. And this means it starts and finishes on the same note, that being G, and it kind of brings a sense of closure to it, because the violin doesn't come in again until later on in the song, in the after the first chorus, and so it feels like its own self-contained motif. So right after the violin stops, the song moves into the second verse, where the rhythm section kicks in with the addition of the bass and drums. The bass is playing the same notes that the staccato guitar was playing in the first verse, C, G, and F. So let's have a look at that. And that brings us into the chorus, but before we enter the chorus, I just want to mention the synth playing a G and an F chord in the second verse, and that entered at the same time as the bass and the drums did.
You sing, save me, save me, save me from myself. I'm the first to get trigger happy, the first to think of my own hell.
Well, listen to that drum fill. Let's solo that, shall we? Oh! So the bass is just going round and round from C to F, C to F. So let's talk about a synth element that's been introduced in the chorus. It's just a C note, but it's being used in a percussive capacity. Another interesting thing to note about the chorus is that Dobbyn's vocals are actually lower in the chorus than they are in the verses.
I'm the first to get trigger happy, the first to think of my own hell. Planning my heart to not where I want it to be, but I'm waiting.
Now the chorus ends with the G chord being played 3 times, with the entire song seeming to come to a pause, before it resumes again.
Waiting, next order call, back in my sweet baby's arms, in a room close, savoring our love while we got rest and recreation.
Now the violin comes back in for the first time since the first verse, so let's listen to that. It's playing the same melody as it did in the intro. Now it's playing something different. Different melody. And it seems faster, and it was almost as if it was answering itself. So let's actually listen to that solo, because it's quite beautiful. After this, we come into the second chorus, which is the same as the first one, except for the addition of a backing vocal, which is likely achieved through a synthesizer. And they're just holding a note of C. So let's listen to that.
'Cause I'm waiting out on the green. I'll never get used to the sea, but I'm waiting, manning my heart, but not where I want it to be. But I'm waiting, I feel like Jonah, never meaning you no harm. But I'm waiting, next port of call, back in my sweet baby's arms, in a room close, savoring.
The second chorus ends in the same way that the first one does, and from here on out it's the outro of the song. The violin plays the same motifs that you hear in the third verse, and the song fades out rather quickly. It leaves you wanting more, which is both annoying and smart. Often when listening to the song, I will play it from the start again because it's so interesting and unique that it deserves multiple listens. My first research question was, how did Dave Dobbyn's influences inform his music? To answer this, I will take a look at who Dave Dobbyn has stated as his favourite artists and influences, and how they may have impacted his music. Dave Dobbyn says he discovered music through his local church, as well as listening to his radiogram and old records. There he heard songs he wanted to sing from artists like the Beatles, David Bowie, and genres like Motown. The influence of Bowie in his earlier music is apparent, and Dave Dobbyn even stated that his first band, The Dudes, would listen to Bowie's earlier work and play along with them, taking a lot of the sound as inspiration.
Well, we used to, when I was a member of the Dudes, just as we came out of school and everything, we got into Hunky Dory and, Ziggy Stardust big time, and Aladdin Sane was huge. And we'd sit around and Ian would play the piano and we'd fumble our way through Hunky Dory.
Moving past the punk rock band of The Dudes, I want to mention a possible influence on the song I just analysed, Wailing. Now, Wailing features a unique use of a single violin as one of the main melodies of the song, and you could definitely draw a comparison to Yesterday by the Beatles. Now, Yesterday features a violin more prominently than Wailing does, but they both use the instrument to evoke a melancholy feeling.
Suddenly, I'm not half the man I used to be.
Guilty Through Neglect, off the same album as Wailing, is a piano ballad, and it personally reminds me of Ray Charles, with a groovy bass line that almost contradicts the topic of the song, as well as the saxophone and other jazz instruments.
I watch you walk away beside the lucky guy. Oh, you never know the one who loved you so. Those tears turn your head around, 'cause there's every reason to smile from ear to ear. All those
Dave Dobbyn describes Paul Simon's Graceland album as a huge influence on Slice of Heaven, saying that upbeat reggae riffs and the group singing of Ladysmith Black Mambazo, a South African male choral group used on the Graceland album, had really gotten to him. Slice of Heaven's additional vocals by New Zealand reggae group Herbs is proof of this influence. Hallelujah Song from the Islander album has a gospel feel, and after a career of trying to escape his Catholic upbringing, Dave Dobbyn describes coming full circle and re-engaging with his faith. The song is overtly Christian and it has a gospel feel, and we can see how his childhood of listening to church songs has helped to mould the sound and feel of this particular song, with the inclusion of an organ being an obvious link.
hallelujah song, sing hallelujah song, hallelujah.
I'd say there are two forms of Dave Dobbyn's music: tender ballads and guitar rock. And that in and of itself is very Beatlesque, those two separate styles of music. For example, the Beatles had songs such as Let It Be, In My Life, For No One, and Yesterday. And then on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, they had songs such as Helter Skelter, Come Together, and Revolution. The Beatles also wrote songs like Don't Let Me Down, which I would describe as a blending of the two genres. Furthermore, Dave Dobbyn has worked with and collaborated with fellow New Zealand artists Tim Finn, Neil Finn, and Bic Runga, who all contributed to the New Zealand music scene. Neil Finn's influence can be heard all over Dave Dobbyn's album Twist, as it was produced by Finn and is a sort of collaboration between the two. Through these examples, we can see how other artists have influenced Dave Dobbyn's work throughout his musical career, with him moulding different sounds in his music to create one of the most unique and interesting discographies of any New Zealand artist. My second research question was, what is the meaning of wailing and how does it relate to Dave Dobbyn's circumstances at the time of writing it? I talked briefly about the meaning of wailing beforehand in my analysis of the song, but now I want to delve deeper. Dave Dobbyn started writing Wailing one lonely night on a beer mat while on tour in Australia. His fiancée Annalisa was across the ditch in New Zealand, and he missed her greatly, feeling extremely homesick. The touring in Australia was gruelling, with the band playing 8 shows a week while still losing money. He thought of his fiancée as a light at the end of the tunnel, an anchor that kept him from being lost at sea. New Zealand pop music has a legacy of great songs built around nautical metaphors. For example, the Split Enz song 6 Months in a Leaky Boat and the Mutton Birds' Anchor Me.
Anchor me, anchor me.
Dobbyn has described wailing as a sea shanty, a song sung by seafarers while performing manual labour. And while wailing may not sound like a traditional sea shanty, it definitely has some characteristics of the ancient genre, such as the repetitive chorus that features lyrics that are slightly different every time. The lyric in Wailing's chorus, I feel like Jonah, never meaning you no harm, is a reference to the book of Jonah in the Bible. Jonah is a prophet who has been instructed by God to foretell the doom of the city of Nineveh. Avoiding this command by God in hopes of saving the city, Jonah instead sails to Tarshish, but a storm hits the ship and the sailors throw him overboard as a sacrifice to save themselves. Jonah is then swallowed by a whale, where he stays for 3 days inside of the belly, praying to God and promising that he will deliver the prophecy. God forgives Jonah and the whale spits him out. So the line, I feel like Jonah, never meaning you no harm, seems to indicate that you is referring to the whale. Jonah never meant the whale any harm when he was swallowed by it. And in extension, through the metaphor of saying that the whaler didn't mean the whale any harm, even though a whaler catches and kills whales, he is saying that the whaler is a reluctant man, just trying to complete his job. The comparison can then be made to the context behind the song, with Dobbyn being in Australia touring while his fiancée was still in New Zealand. He is saying that he does not mean her any harm by being away from her, only that he is reluctant to do so, and it's his job to do so. Dobbyn describes the verses as self-encouraging and an aid to persevering against the tide. We can certainly see this in lyrics like,
And when your ship can't handle the heaviest seas, your spirits will get you through. No down on bended knees.
Dobbyn's hard time in Australia with his band Dee Dee Smash is evident in the sentiments of the song. A song that can describe so many people who are struggling with being away from home or missing loved ones. The song has an overall positive and encouraging message, with the lyrics that close each chorus and ultimately close the song, speaking of moments of satisfaction while with loved ones.
Next morning, call back in my sweet baby's arms. In a room close, savoring our love while we got rest and recreation.